We level against self-proclaimed, non-racist, progressive whites. This is a conversation that we really need to have, and social media operates in a different vein when we're talking about non-racist whites, right? A way that you can demonstrate or perform solidarity with Black Lives Matter movements, for example, on social media. You can even march in the streets with folks.
And we're seeing that. I mean, look at the crowds there,
exactly,
right? Yeah, right.
But my point is this: there's a difference between, in a very public, protected way, showing allyship in the realm of private interactions or in these protected spaces. But what does it mean to really take a stance, to really intervene in a larger macro platform that requires a political stance that addresses white nationalism?
Okay.
That's a very different proposition.
And we're going to stay on that. So, Amy, that's the question I'm going to ship over to you, Gloria. How do we do this allyship that she's addressing? How do you step forward based on what Amy is saying, Gloria?
Well, there's actually a case before the U.S. Supreme Court that's coming up in this upcoming session that deals with membership and who can belong to what and still have it be covered as a quiet member name. You're not exposed. Your privacy is protected. And so when we're talking about if you're a member of the Ku Klux Klan, and that's why I say this is a Klan march, and then you can call it whatever you want. It's a fancy name, white supremacists, etc. How do we then address those people based on freedom of speech who want to join a white supremacist organization? Under our Constitution, they have the freedom of speech, they have a freedom of association, they can join these organizations. In other countries, it would be against the law, and ours is not. And until they actually ban the Ku Klux Klan and other organizations that are offshoots of the Ku Klux Klan, these people can be members of these organizations. Now, how far are they allowed to go in their rhetoric? If they threaten human life, that's a different story.
It is a difference. And Tom, we're not seeing a lot of numbers, though. No. That are deciding to do what you just described, Gloria, stand up and participate as a protester with the white nationalists.
Well, listen, with Charlottesville last year, the man who's been indicted and charged with murder and federal hate crimes, he was on social media, expressing these pro-Nazi, pro-white sort of views, and no one knew who he was. His family was aware, his teachers were aware, his friends were aware, and the numbers weren't necessarily outrageous last year in Charlottesville. So it just took that time on social media for this young man, James Alex Fields, to develop this sort of a belief system and show up and cause harm. And, I think so. I think that's important. I had a chance in early July to go down to Charlottesville and talk to the new police chief there, a black woman, Michelle Brackney, who talked about how, what healing looks like. And I think we talk about these buzzwords, healing and solving America's racial wounds and problems, and we don't really know what that exactly means. And what Chief Brackney was talking about was that the police officers in Charlottesville and the larger institution as a whole need to be called to account from inside. So it was part of her mission to make sure her police officers knew that they needed to be accountable when they didn't act the right way, or that they needed to be accountable and aware that there's a long history of resentment in certain communities of how they've acted, not just over the years, but throughout the centuries that this country has existed. So I think that's important. Naming what healing looks like, talking about accountability, and then following up and seeing that is actually happening, whether it's Charlottesville, whether it's D.C., Ferguson, or wherever, or what have you, and see if these improvements have been made.
But racism is a chronic disease. That is embedded into this country. When Thomas Jefferson wrote those words, he wrote it in the presence of enslaved Africans, taking the land away from Native Americans. This is part of our ongoing struggle. And in order to have a struggle, you have to know that you have a problem. And you have to actually say, I'm going to address this problem. I'm going to do what I need to do to keep the chronic disease from actually destroying the host. My concern is, as we heard with these politicians on in the earlier program here, that they don't want to talk about the issue of racism. As this one person said, we're tired of talking about race. We're tired of talking about this issue. And whenever you have an economic downturn, which we did with the Great Recession, then you have poor whites who are then shaken out of the economy, blaming people of color, blaming immigrants for their economic disposition and their economic, being able to put on the periphery of everything else. When they say we're not going to be replaced, I'm not replacing them. Technology is. Their lack of education is. And blaming people of color and blaming immigrants is not the answer.
We've got to leave it there, but I want a one-word answer from all four of you as we watch these pictures here and as we look at the question as are race relations getting better or worse? That's been polled 6 ways to Sunday. Your views, Amy?
It's becoming more complicated, and it's asking us to be accountable in ways that are going to make us deeply uncomfortable.
Mark?
Quantitatively, yes, we see that by the very numbers of those who are out there counter-protesting today, but qualitatively, no, because they make a lot of noise.
Todd?
I think no, because I think we're talking about all different types of race relations, and I don't think anyone is really talking about the actual ingrained issues that are kind of uncomfortable to talk about.
Gloria, one word.
White racists are fighting a generational war. The liberals, people of color, think about next year. 2044, this country will be majority people of color, and they're trying to make it into an apartheid state.
Gloria Brown Marshall, Todd Johnson, Amy Cox, Mark Thompson, thank you all for a great way to cover this very important news event today. Again, breaking news coming out of Washington, D.C. Appreciate all four of you. Duly noted, or in Omarosa's case, recorded. NBC has exclusive audio of the moment John Kelly fired her from the White House in the Situation Room. Plus, what she regrets the most during her time as a former aide to President Trump.
I was complicit with this White House deceiving this nation. They continue to deceive this nation by how mentally declined he is, how difficult it is for him to process complex information.
Hate is on the rise in America. I've dedicated my life to pulling people out of hate. I know how these people think because I used to be one of them.
This is a story about mail and packages. And it's also a story about people. People who rely on us every day to deliver their dreams. They're handing us more than mail. They're handing us their business. And while we make more e-commerce deliveries to homes than anyone else in the country, we never forget that your business is our business. The United States Postal Service. Priority, you.
For myself and you, I know this love is true. And I never let you go. First,
Elite Singles, the leading dating site for highly educated singles. Register today to love again at elitesingles.com.
what's the horse?
What you don't see can hurt you. Today's connected world is full of threats you may not see if you just monitor your credit to help protect your identity. LifeLock sees more, like your personal information on the dark web. And now with the power of Norton, we detect threats like ransomware too, to help protect your identity and devices. Plus, if there's an identity theft problem, we'll work to fix it with
before you start and while taking Xeljanz XR and monitor certain liver tests. Tell your doctor if you are in a region where fungal infections are common, and if you have had TB, hepatitis B or C, or are prone to infections. Needles. Fine for some things, but for you, one pill a day may provide symptom relief. Ask your doctor about Xeljanz XR, an injection.
It's your boy Diego, and I'm here at Rallies and Checkers, and I'm about to get down on a fries and more deal. Mix and match with French fries, just $2. You got these fries, and you gotta wash them down. You better get one of these drinks to go with it. You want a fry and a burger? You can make that happen. You got fries, you got a shake, boom, yes. You want a fry and a chicken sandwich? What was that? Oh, I want to be your best friend too. Sandwich? Famous seasoned fries with your choice of item. Just $2. Rallies and Checkers. Fast foodies know the deal.
Alarm off. Let's go. Quick to start and slow to quit. You've made a life. Sometimes messy, always remarkable. You wouldn't change a thing, so you keep going. Providing, nurturing, pushing, and planning. America was built because heroes like you have the courage to get out of bed in the morning. When the lights are out, when the work is done, we'll be there for you. You can count on it. The Original Mattress Factory. Get a good night's sleep. You've earned it.
Mr. President, do you feel betrayed by Omarosa, sir?
Send him back out the way!
Lowlife. She's a lowlife.
Instead of talking about how to unify the nation, he actually insulted me by calling me a lowlife.
Right,
that is a man who is inclined to start racially charged engagement and use race to kind of stir up his base.
Well, there it is on a Sunday. Omarosa versus Trump in a very real reality TV-like showdown. This morning, Omarosa Manigault-Newman joining NBC's Chuck Todd on Meet the Press in an exclusive interview about her tell-all book, her exit from the White House, and claims President Trump is a racist. For more on this conversation of race firings and audio tapes, let's bring in our panel. Grace Rouse, Spectrum News, New York One political reporter and host of New York One's Off Topic on Politics podcast. Noel Nikpour, Republican strategist. Tara Dardell, Democratic strategist and former Apprentice contestant. Gloria Brown Marshall, also back with us. Tara, let's start with you then, because we are talking about another former Apprentice contestant. I think she's out apprenticing, if you will, Mr. Donald Trump at this moment.
Well, I would say this. Donald Trump surrounds himself with people who are like Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And I want to make a point about Omarosa because a lot of people are sort of belittling the role that she played. They have had a long-standing relationship for nearly 15 years. Much of that relationship has been financial in nature. So she has been very much aligned with him from a business perspective, from a personal perspective, in terms of they had some sort of friendship. From my dealings with her, that existed too. So I think that while people are impugning her credibility, and certainly she hasn't helped her credibility, she knows a lot about Donald Trump.
And she also knows a lot about General Kelly, the chief of staff. And I want to play what was also an exclusive to Meet the Press. This is a piece of sound that came from what we understand to be the firing of Omarosa by General Kelly. Let's take a listen to it.
I think it's important to understand that if we make this a friendly departure, we can all be, you can look at your time here in the White House as a year of service to the nation, and then you can go on without any type of difficulty in the future relative to your reputation.
Can I ask you a couple questions? Is the president aware of this?
Let's not go down the road. This is a non-negotiable discussion.
I don't want to negotiate. I've never had a chance to talk to you, General Kelly. So if this is my departure, I'd like to have at least an opportunity to understand.
We can talk another time. This has to do with some pretty serious integrity violations. So I'll let it go with that. So the staff and everyone on the staff works for me, not the president.
So Noel Nikpour, we are listening to audio of the chief of staff sitting down with Omarosa in the White House, in the Situation Room, we believe here, and it's being recorded by somebody's, what appears to be, cell phone in what is supposed to be one of the most secure places, at least in Washington, D.C.
I don't think she should have carried her cell phone in and recorded this private situation at all, number one. And number two, a lot of people that know Omarosa think that she's a major opportunist. And when she joined the Trump campaign, a lot of people were wondering, what is she doing? Mm-hmm. I've been a Republican operative for a long time. Omarosa has never been involved in any sort of political movement or anything. And I think that she is trying to remain relevant. Why would you go and praise Donald Trump over and over and over again and be a sidekick to try to help him win the election? And then now you're recording conversations. I'm sure John Kelly didn't know he was recording.
I bet you General Kelly, when seeing or hearing this, is probably going, and then you can see the smokestack off, Grace, because how is this White House being run, right? There are security protocols that are involved in this. There could be legal action now taken based on what those security protocols are for the Situation Room.
Right, I'm having flashbacks to the Rob Porter situation, right, where in the wake of his dismissal after he was accused of abusing his ex-wife, or multiple exes, there was a whole question and discussion and debate around security clearances. Here was someone who was potentially vulnerable to blackmail, or somebody had leverage over him, and yet he received very high-level security clearances. Now, with Omarosa's departure, we're not really talking about her book. We're not talking about these accusations that now suddenly she realizes that the president is a racist. But the security question, how does somebody get a recording device into the Situation Room? How is something like that allowed to even happen? And this is
it's not even good. I mean, she's being fired because she's violated. She's been taking the White House car meant for dignitaries as her regular commute back and forth.
Serious legal issues is what he says. We don't know necessarily what they are specifically. At least it's not on that tape.
Well, should have. If she's going to record it, she should have gotten some good stuff.
Well,
she got a nothing burger.
The thing is, there is.
So the fact that she had a recording in there is not a nothing burger, though. I mean, it just shows the level of chaos that exists in the Trump White House. I mean, the fact that all of this shenanigans continues to go on day after day after day. This is a White House that continues to be out of control, and the Omarosa situation is just yet another example. I've said this again, I'll say it again. It's yet another example of the chaos, the corruption, the catfighting, and the cover-up that exists in the Trump administration.
Disgruntled employee? I mean, she didn't do anything like this when she was at the White House.
But Trump picks all these people, and then he surrounds himself with these same personality types.